I never thought a signature could shatter my entire world. That morning felt ordinary, almost too ordinary for what was about to unfold. I had just signed my will, thinking I was protecting the woman I loved more than life itself. But by nightfall, she was gone. No note, no explanation, just emptiness. Where her laughter used to be, we had built everything together. From late nights scraping by in a tiny apartment to watching the ink dry on million-dollar deals, I thought we were unbreakable. But now, every corner of this mansion feels colder. Every echo of her name cuts deeper. Was it all a lie? Or did someone, take her away from me? The hardest part, it happened the day I thought I was securing our future. And that haunts me every single day. I'm sharing this now, not because I've healed, but because someone out there might be standing where I stood, trusting blindly, loving fiercely, and never imagining betrayal could be waiting just around the corner. What really happened to her, and why did she vanish the moment my fortune became hers? If my story resonates with you, or if you're as desperate for answers as I am, please like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe. This is just the beginning, and the truth is darker than you think. I woke up that morning thinking about love, the kind of love that feels solid like stone beneath your feet. I brewed her coffee just the way she liked it, 2 sugars and a splash of almond milk, and hummed to myself as I watched the sunrise from the kitchen window. I had no idea I was staring into the last normal day of my life. The will lay open on the table, a cluster of legalese and neat signatures, my name looped beside hers, binding us in ways I thought were unbreakable. The ink shimmered faintly, not yet dry, almost like a living thing. I touched it lightly with my fingertip as if that would somehow make it more real. It felt momentous. It felt safe. She came down the stairs barefoot, hair still damp from the shower, smelling of jasmine and something sharper underneath, something I couldn't quite name. She smiled at me, that lazy, familiar smile, and pressed a quick kiss to my lips. But her eyes didn't match her mouth. They flitted away like a bird too restless to perch. I should have asked, should have grabbed her hand and asked us, but I let it slide, like always. She left around noon, said she had errands to run. Her voice was breezy, her keys jangling like a charm bracelet as she stepped out the door. I stood there a moment, holding her empty coffee cup, staring at the spot where she'd just been. It felt off, but I told myself I was imagining things. I always told myself that. The hours stretched long and thin. I worked a little. I checked my phone too often. By 5 p.m. I was pacing. By 8, the silence in the house felt thick enough to choke on. I tried calling her once, twice, 10 times, straight to voicemail. I kept glancing at the door, convinced I'd hear her keys any second, that familiar jingle and the soft whoosh of her coat as she shrugged it off. But nothing. Her shoes were still lined up by the door, her favorite scarf, a threadbare red thing she wouldn't part with, tossed on the chair like she'd be back in 5 minutes, except she wasn't. By 10 p.m., my chest was tight, my hands shaking as I scrolled through security footage. There she was at 2:47 p.m., stepping out the door, bag slung over her shoulder, normal, and then nothing. Not a flicker of her after 3 p.m., no return, like the earth had swallowed her whole. I waited. God, I waited. Every creak of the floorboards made my heart jump, every shadow stretched too long. Midnight came and went, and with it, any lingering hope I had left. I sat in the dark, gripping my phone like a lifeline, staring at that damned will on the table. The ink had dried now, set in stone like everything else in my life, and that's when I knew, really knew. She wasn't coming home. I tore through every room like a madman, yanking open drawers, ripping back closet doors, pulling clothes from hangers with trembling hands. My mind kept repeating the same useless mantra. She has to be here. She has to be here. But with every empty corner, every undisturbed shelf, the truth crept in, cold and undeniable. Her wedding ring, gone, the delicate gold band I slid onto her finger 5 years ago, the one she swore she'd never take off, even to shower. Missing. Her passport, too. I'd seen it just last week, tucked inside the bedside drawer where we kept all the little things married people collect, old movie stubs, hotel key cards, random photos we never framed. That drawer was half empty now, half full of ghosts. I stood there, staring down at the gaping hole where her passport should have been, my breath ragged. My reflection in the bedroom mirror looked like a stranger, pale, wide-eyed, a man unmoored. I ran outside, still barefoot, and banged on the neighbor's door. Old Mr. Willoughby answered, his eyes wary, his robe hanging open at the chest. "She left around 3, he said, scratching his head. Had a small suitcase with her, thought it was odd, but I didn't even let him finish. I stormed back inside, slamming the door behind me so hard the windows rattled. A suitcase? What suitcase? I never saw her pack. I never heard the zipper, never noticed anything out of place. I grabbed my phone and started dialing. Her best friend Rachel answered on the second ring. Too chipper. Too rehearsed. "Oh, I'm sure she's fine. Maybe she just needed some space." Her sister sounded the same, vague, dismissive. Her words slick with something oily. "She's probably at a spa or something. Don't worry so much." Don't worry, my wife had vanished. I hung up, numb and shaking. My lawyer's voice from earlier that day when I signed the will kept looping in my head. "You've done the right thing. She's secure now." Secure. That word felt like poison now, seeping into every crack of my mind. I stumbled back upstairs and sank onto the bedroom floor, gripping her pillow so tightly my knuckles went white. I pressed my face into it, desperate to breathe her in, but nothing. It smelled like detergent, like emptiness. I sat there, rocking slightly, my eyes burning. Was this the plan all along? Had she been playing the long game, smiling sweetly while she mapped out her escape? The clock ticked. The house creaked. Shadows stretched long and thin across the floor like skeletal fingers. Sleep felt like betrayal. Like if I closed my eyes, I was admitting defeat. But my body betrayed me anyway. I drifted off, clutching that pillow, my dreams a flickering, jagged mess. Her face kept flashing in the dark behind my eyelids, but it wouldn't hold, wouldn't stay. It was like watching her on a broken TV screen, a beautiful glitch, here 1 second, gone the next. And when I woke up, the silence was even louder. I walked into the police station with her picture in my hand, heart pounding like a war drum, the kind of pounding that makes your vision blur around the edges, that steals your breath before you've even spoken. I slid the photo across the counter. Our wedding day, her smile bright, but now somehow sinister. The officer barely glanced at it before his eyes flicked up to me, cold and assessing, the kind of look that said, "You sure you're the victim here?" I filed the report, voice brittle, stumbling over her description. 5'7", chestnut hair, a scar on her left wrist from a fall she never quite explained. I kept expecting the officer to nod, to say something reassuring, but he just kept writing, his pen scratching like it was carving my guilt into the paper. By morning, the story had leaked. I didn't know who tipped them off, but there it was, splashed across the news like a goddamn soap opera. Millionaire's wife mysteriously disappears after will signing. The words felt like knives. I'd always hated that label, millionaire, as if it stripped everything else away. Husband, friend, human. Now it felt even uglier, like bait. The emails started almost immediately. The first one hit me like a sucker punch. "Nice insurance policy, huh? Hope she's worth the payout." I stared at it for a long time, jaw clenched, before deleting it. But they kept coming. A trickle that turned into a flood. Accusations, suspicions, strangers dissecting my marriage like vultures, picking apart a carcass. At night, I couldn't sleep. I'd sit in the dark, the TV flickering uselessly, and watch old videos of us. Her laugh, bright and free, echoing around the room. Us dancing at some friend's wedding, her hair falling over her eyes as she pulled me close. I froze the frames, studied her face, hunting for cracks. Did she look distracted? Was there a flicker of doubt I'd missed? Did she mean it when she said forever? My phone rang once, twice, 100 times. Every buzz twisted my gut into knots. Every time I hoped, prayed it would be her voice on the other end. But it never was. Just lawyers, reporters, the detective, Detective Ward. He sat across from me, a legal pad balanced on his knee, eyes sharp as razors. "Do you think she left you?" he asked, his tone maddeningly neutral. "Or something worse?" I stared at him, my mouth opening, then closing. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know what I believed anymore. My heart said one thing. She loved me. She had to. But my gut twisted with doubt I couldn't shake. Days blurred into nights, and nights into something worse. The house felt hollow, every creak a taunt. I found myself whispering to the walls, repeating her name like a prayer or maybe a curse. How do you move on when the only thing you want is the one thing you'll never understand? The truth is, you don't. You haunt yourself. The detective's office smelled like cold coffee and dust. He laid out the bank statements one by one, each sheet a quiet betrayal. Joint accounts bled dry little by little. $200 here, $150 there. Over months, slow enough to slide under my radar, but steady like a leak you don't notice until the ceiling caves in. She was smart, he muttered, flipping through the pages. Not greedy. Methodical. I wanted to scream at him, tell him he didn't know her, but deep down a part of me, the part that had started rotting the night she disappeared, wondered if maybe he did. Back at home, I scoured her phone for clues, even though I'd promised myself I wouldn't be that kind of man. But love makes you blind. Betrayal sharpens your vision like glass in a wound. Buried under endless photos of sunsets and meaningless texts about groceries, I found it. A message to a number I didn't recognize. 3 words, time stamped a week before she vanished. Soon. I'm ready. Ready for what? Her best friend Lila sat across from me 2 days later, eyes flicking everywhere but at mine. Her hands fidgeted in her lap, twisting a napkin into shreds. "I don't know anything," she kept saying, her voice paper thin, but her lips were pressed tight like she was holding back a mouthful of poison. I pressed harder and she finally broke. "She wasn't happy," Lila whispered. She felt trapped, said she needed to breathe." I leaned back, staring. "So she ran?" Lila shook her head quickly, too quickly. "I didn't say that, but she didn't have to. That night I tore the house apart. Every drawer, every closet, every old shoebox she'd ever tucked away. My hand shook as I rifled through the debris of our life, tossing aside love letters and wedding photos like they were scraps of garbage. And then, tucked inside an old hardcover book she never read, I found it. A manila folder, slim and ominous. Inside, one sheet of paper, her handwriting jagged and rushed. No salutation, no signature. Just this. "I have to do this. Please forgive me." Forgive what? I sat on the bedroom floor, that paper clutched in my hand, staring at nothing as the hours ticked by. The room felt smaller by the second, the walls inching closer, the air too thick to breathe. It was like the house itself had turned on me, all those years of love and laughter now curdling into something sour and mean. The worst part? I started to feel invisible, like I was the one who'd disappeared, not her. Every mirror I passed seemed to flicker, my reflection thin and blurred, like I was fading out of my own life. I used to think knowing the truth would bring me peace, but now every answer just cracked the portrait a little more, revealing something twisted underneath, and I wasn't sure I wanted to see the whole picture anymore, not if it looked like this. The private investigator's words hung in the air like poison. She rented a P.O. box under a different name. I laughed when he told me, that bitter, hollow laugh that feels like it's coming from someone else. Because of course she did. Of course there was a second life tucked neatly inside ours, folded up like a cruel little secret, waiting to be unfolded at the worst possible moment. Then came the CCTV footage. Grainy, black and white, but unmistakable. Her, my wife, sitting in a cafe, leaning in close to a man I didn't recognize. The way her fingers brushed his wrist, the tilt of her head, the small smiles she used to save just for me. Intimate, familiar. I watched it on loop, my fists clenched so tight my nails dug crescent moons into my palms. I wanted to hate her. God, I tried to hate her. But mostly what I felt was this cavernous emptiness, like my chest had been hollowed out and left to echo. Piece by jagged piece, my heart came apart, sharp enough to cut if I even breathed too hard. Everyone around me, friends, family, vultures in disguise, kept circling back to the same question, their voices dripping with that mix of pity and accusation. Didn't you see this coming? No, I didn't. I saw love. I believed in it. Blindly, maybe stupidly. I thought love was something you could shore up, build like a fortress, brick by brick. Turns out it's more like sand. Shifts when you're not looking, disappears right out from under you. Every night I stared at her side of the bed, the sheets still faintly crumpled, the dent from her pillow refusing to vanish. Half of me hoping, aching, that I'd wake up from this nightmare, that she'd come waltzing back through the door saying something ridiculous like, "You wouldn't believe the day I've had." But every morning, the truth slammed back down heavier than the day before. She was gone. And she'd chosen to be gone. Then the anonymous tip came in. 3 words that felt like a gut punch. Check the Caymans. The Caymans. The cliche of it all almost made me laugh. It was too on the nose, too soap opera, but the dread pooling in my stomach told me it was real. Too real. I sat there holding my phone in one hand, the PI's report in the other, and realized something that chilled me to the bone. It wasn't just that she'd left, it was that she'd planned it. Every step, every lie, every soft kiss goodbye, staged. A performance so flawless I never saw the strings until the whole thing collapsed. And here's the cruelest twist. It wasn't even the betrayal that gutted me most. No, it was the echoing question that kept me up at night, gnawing at my insides. What hurts more, the truth, or knowing you were never enough to deserve the truth? I boarded that plane to the Caymans, gripping my passport like it was a talisman, though by then, hope was already fraying at the edges. My suitcase was light, clothes for a few days, a folder of her photos, and a desperation so heavy it bent my spine. I kept rehearsing what I'd say if I found her, the words twisting tighter every time I closed my eyes. Would I beg, scream, collapse at her feet? I didn't know. I just knew I had to see her. Proof of life. Proof of something. The air was thick with salt and sun when I landed, but none of it touched me. I was a ghost in paradise, moving from hotel lobby to hotel lobby, shoving grainy printouts of her photo across polished counters. "Have you seen her?" became my broken mantra. Most clerks didn't even glance up. Some shook their heads with polite disinterest, others offered pitying smiles, but none of them knew. Days blurred into each other. I barely ate. I barely slept. The money I'd once guarded like a dragon hoarding gold was bleeding out in stacks, tips, bribes, promises. I didn't care. I would have burned every last dollar if it meant catching a glimpse of her. The image of her face, framed by that dark, windswept hair, haunted me in every crowd. Every time I thought I saw her, my heart ricocheted against my ribs like it was trying to break free. Every time it wasn't her, the fall felt harder. Then, on the 13th day, a flicker. A bartender at a dingy beachside bar, eyes sharp beneath sunburned skin, froze when he saw her photo. He didn't even hesitate. "Yeah," he said, voice low. "She was here. Sat right over there. Corner booth, ordered a mojito. Alone." His eyes darkened. Didn't look like she was on vacation. Looked like she was running. I gripped the counter so hard my knuckles went bloodless. When? 3, maybe 4 days ago. She didn't stay long, left in a rush, cash only. I could have kissed him. Instead, I slid 100 across the bar and asked for anything that might help. He disappeared for a minute, then came back with a crumpled receipt. A signature, messy but unmistakably hers, looped across the bottom. My pulse roared in my ears. This was real. She was here. I wasn't chasing shadows, I was chasing her. But then came the cold prickle of dread. Why here? Why now? What was she running from or toward? I started piecing together her trail, each fragment jagged and incomplete. ATM withdrawals, late-night cab rides, a room rented under a fake name. The deeper I dug, the more the island seemed to swallow her whole. She was close. I could feel it, but just out of reach, like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. At night, in the cheap motel room that smelled of mildew and regret, I whispered to the dark, "Almost there. Don't stop now." But the more I searched, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about finding her. This was about unraveling whatever truth she'd buried. And the closer I got, the more I started to wonder, what if the truth was the very thing that would finally break me? The rain came down in sheets that night, the kind of cold, hard rain that feels personal, like punishment. I hadn't planned to be out. I'd told myself to stay home, to stop chasing ghosts, but there I was, half drunk, half desperate, weaving through slick streets with my collar pulled up and my eyes scanning every face, every shadow. And then I saw her. Or I thought I did. A flash of auburn hair, that loping stride I knew like my own heartbeat. She turned down an alley without looking back, her coat whipping behind her like a cape. My stomach dropped. My legs moved before my brain could catch up. I ran. God, I ran. My shoes slapped the wet pavement. My breath tore out in ragged gasps, my heart thudding so hard I thought it might burst. I turned the corner. Empty. I spun around, searching, wild-eyed, scanning the dark. A figure emerged from the shadows, same height, same hair, same... No, not her. Just some woman fumbling for her phone, eyes wide with alarm as she saw me standing there like a madman. "Sorry," I muttered, backing away, shame flooding my veins, hot and thick. "I thought you were someone else." She didn't answer, just hurried off, heels clicking like accusations against the wet asphalt. I leaned against the brick wall, chest heaving, staring up at the sky as the rain beat down. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, from her, from what she'd done to me or what I'd let myself become. Hope curdles fast when it's fed too long. What had started as belief that she'd come back, that there was some reason, some explanation, had soured into something sharp, something bitter. I was unraveling and I knew it, but knowing didn't stop me. Back at my apartment, I drank until my reflection blurred, until my thoughts slurred into each other, all jagged edges and raw nerves. I stared at my phone, willing it to light up. It didn't. It never did. Sleep became a rumor. Night stretched too long, too empty. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, except it wasn't her anymore. It was a distorted version, warped and flickering like a bad signal. I started to wonder, was I even chasing her? Or just the idea of her? The woman I thought. I knew. The love I thought was real. And then the real gut punch. News broke that my company, my pride, my anchor was sinking fast. Lawsuits filed. Partners jumping ship. Deals falling apart like wet paper. My inbox filled with frantic messages, warnings, betrayals. The empire I'd built, brick by careful brick, was crumbling, and I was too hollow to even care. I sat in the dark, watching everything fall away. My wife, my fortune, my sanity. It was all slipping through my fingers like sand, and I just let it. Because deep down a voice whispered what I'd been too afraid to admit. Maybe this was the plan all along. Maybe losing her was just the first domino. And maybe, just maybe, I deserved every last bit of it. The box was buried beneath old tax forms and useless keepsakes, things we tell ourselves matter until they don't. I found it on a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day where the sky can't decide if it wants to cry or burn. I wasn't looking for anything. Maybe that's why I found it. Her handwriting hit me like a slap, loopy, feminine, familiar in a way that made my throat tighten. I sat cross-legged on the cold hardwood floor, the box between my knees, and started to read. The first few letters were soft, full of love and promises. You make me feel safe. Every morning with you is a gift. It was all there, that saccharine sweetness we peddle to each other when the world still feels full of maybes. I clung to every word like a drowning man to driftwood. But then, as the stack grew taller in my lap, something shifted. The words got sharper. The loops in her handwriting grew tighter, strangled almost, like her pen was clenching its own fist. She wrote about feeling tired, about walls closing in, about love turning into obligation like a job she couldn't quit. One line gutted me. Sometimes love feels like a noose. I read that one over and over, the words smearing under my thumb as if they wanted to disappear but couldn't. How long had she felt that way? How blind had I been? I thought I was giving her the world, but maybe I was just building her a gilded cage. Was this her escape plan? Was vanishing the only way she thought she could breathe again? I wanted to be angry. God, I wanted to. But all I felt was this gnawing ache, deep and raw, like mourning someone who's still alive but lost to you in every way that matters. I took the letters outside one by one and fed them to the fire pit. The flames licked each page hungrily, curling the edges into blackened ghosts. Her words turned to ash and floated up into the night sky, weightless, meaningless. I whispered her name as the last letter burned. Not shouting. Not crying, just a hush, like a prayer or a curse, I'm not sure which anymore. The stars blinked indifferently overhead, the wind didn't even stir. Silence pressed in on all sides, thick and suffocating, no answers, no closure, just the empty space where love used to live. That's the thing no one tells you, some stories don't end. They just echo. Long after the people are gone, long after the damage is done. I stayed there until the fire died out, staring into the embers, half expecting her ghost to step out of the shadows. But nothing came. Nothing ever does. And maybe that's the closest thing to closure I'll ever get. Months passed. The world moved on, but I stayed frozen, an unwilling relic in the wreckage of what used to be my life. Time blurred into days and days into weeks. Everyone else, friends, acquaintances, even strangers, slipped further away, their voices softer, their faces more distant. The steady hum of normalcy around me only magnified how out of place I felt. I could almost hear the world whispering to me, Move on. It's time. But I couldn't. Not yet. The house was hollow now. It felt less like a home and more like a tomb. Each room stood as a silent witness to my undoing. The faint smell of her perfume still clung to the walls, familiar but alien in its absence. The mornings were the worst. I'd wake to the same empty bed, the same silent halls, the same gnawing emptiness that had become my constant companion. Money? It was a joke now. The fortune I thought would protect me had turned against me, mocking me from the vaults and accounts that no longer held any meaning. The mansion, once a symbol of my success, was just another weight around my neck. The staff had gone. The lavish dinners ceased. The calls from my accountant became a reminder of just how far I'd fallen. But then, one morning, something unexpected arrived. A letter. I don't know why I expected it to be her. Maybe because my mind had been searching for answers so long I'd become desperate for a thread, any thread to tie everything together. But it wasn't her. Not in the way I had imagined. There was no return address, just a plain envelope with the faintest smudge of something, maybe lipstick or dust. It looked ordinary, too ordinary to carry anything important. But when I ripped it open, I felt my pulse quicken. Inside, there were just 4 words scrawled in the same cursive handwriting that used to comfort me. I'm sorry. Be free. No explanation. No apology that felt sincere enough to heal the jagged wound she'd left behind. Just those words, simple and final, like the cold click of a lock closing behind me. No more chasing after shadows, no more questions, no more hope. Just nothing. I stared at the paper for what felt like an eternity. My hands trembled, my eyes burned. The ink blurred as my tears fell onto the fragile paper, the words becoming a smear of indistinct regret. I didn't know what hurt more, the realization that this was the end, or the crushing truth that I had been living in a prison of my own making, the quietness of it all, the lack of any explanation, any closure. She had never been one for closure, had she? I tried to read the letter again. Be free. The words echoed in my mind, and I couldn't decide if they were a final gift or a cruel parting shot. What was freedom? For her? For me? Maybe it was a gift. Maybe that was all she could give me in the end. A door slamming shut with finality. No room for doubt, no chance to second guess. Just the sharp, resounding click of the lock, leaving me standing alone in the dark. I didn't cry anymore. I hadn't for weeks. But this time I let the tears come. They didn't make anything better. They didn't bring her back. But in that moment I finally understood. She was gone. And there was nothing left to hold on to. I felt lighter, like a balloon that had escaped its tether rising into the empty sky. But it wasn't the kind of lightness I had hoped for. It was emptiness, the kind that fills you up and leaves you hollow at the same time. And for the first time I whispered into the silence of the room, the words falling from my lips like a prayer. Goodbye. It's been a year now. A year since the first moment I realized I was alone. A year since I watched everything I thought I knew slip away like sand through my fingers. The mansion, once full of promises and empty laughter, is gone. The money, too, gone. The numbers in my bank account, just numbers. They don't feel real anymore. I thought losing her would be the hardest thing I'd ever go through, but it wasn't. No, the hardest thing was what came after. The silence, the weight of it, the stillness that settled in my bones and made it impossible to remember what life felt like before the world broke open. There were days when I felt like I was walking through a fog, as if everything I touched was just an illusion, a distant memory I couldn't hold on to. Some nights I walk along the beach, my feet sinking into the cool sand, the salt of the ocean biting at my skin. I let the waves crash around my ankles, hoping the water will wash away the bitterness that lingers inside of me, the bitterness that's become as familiar as the air I breathe. It never works, though. The bitterness stays. Sometimes I still look over my shoulder, half hoping, half dreading. I wonder if she'll just be there, standing on the horizon, a silhouette in the fading light. I wonder if she'll come back to me, if she'll apologize for everything, if she'll explain why she left. It's a hopeless hope, I know. It's a story I tell myself to make the pain a little more bearable. But she's not coming back. I know that now, but that doesn't stop the ache, the empty space where she used to be. I walk through the house, what's left of it anyway, and I find traces of her, pieces that slip between the cracks, a forgotten sweater on the back of a chair, a lipstick mark on a mirror. It's funny, isn't it? How the smallest things can cut the deepest. A year later, and I'm still drowning in the little remnants of her. It's as if she left behind 1,000 paper cuts, each one a reminder of everything I lost. But I'm still here, breathing, healing, slowly. The cracks are still there, of course. They'll never go away. But I've learned to live with them. I've learned that the scars are part of me now. They don't define me, but they've shaped me, carved me into someone new, someone who understands the weight of loss, the weight of betrayal, in ways I never could have imagined before. Love didn't destroy me. Expectations did. The expectations that love would save me, that love would fix everything, that love would always be enough. But it wasn't. Not this time. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real story here. We all think we know what love is, what it should be, but sometimes it's a lie we tell ourselves. Sometimes it's a fantasy, a dream we've built up to avoid facing the truth. The truth is, I loved her, but I loved the idea of us even more. To everyone watching, if you've ever been broken, blindsided, or left in the dark, you're not alone. I know that now. We all have our cracks, our scars, our stories that no one sees, but we survive. We heal. We move forward, even when it feels impossible. So, comment your thoughts and subscribe if my story hits close to home. Trust me, we're stronger than we think, and we will make it through this piece by shattered piece.